intended to at our April 27th meeting. We had 7 emails on that 3rd Street development. I just wanted to advise anyone who might be listening who has submitted that correspondence that all of that correspondence will be forwarded to the next time the High Street development applications come forward to council. So thank you. We appreciate the input, and that is will be forwarded, as I say, to that meeting. The second is that we had 1 email this evening and 4 emails at the April 27th meeting regarding reduction in speed limit on Courser Drive. And so again, that will be coming to council at a future meeting as part of a staff report on speed limit recommendations in different parts of the community. So again, to those who have corresponded with council, we appreciate your input. It will be forwarded to that appropriate meeting. Having said that, I'll seek a motion to approve the agenda as amended.
Motion to approve.
We haven't moved and seconded. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? That carries unanimous. Thank you. So, and we have 2 sets of minutes to approve this evening, those from our regular council meeting of April 27th and those from our special council meeting of May 4th. If I get have movers, please. Councillors Duck and Novick. Second. Any corrections to those minutes? Seeing none, those in favor? That carries unanimous. Thank you. And we're next turning to public participation, our regular opportunity to allow members of the public to come forward to address council on any matter on the agenda or a matter of general public town interest. We ask speakers to keep the remarks to 4 minutes to be fair to all speakers. When you come forward, please provide your name, the municipality that you reside in, or the organization you represent, and I'll call for a first time anyone wishing to come forward. Please come forward. You can adjust the height of the microphone, and there's a little button at the bottom to make it live.
Thank you. I'm here today to address the proposal for 9972 3rd Street.
And can you provide your name and...
Oh, geez, that's Rob Simon, and I live in Sydney. But I'm here today to address the proposal for 9972 3rd Street. But I cannot start with the building itself. I want to start to address the obligations of the applicant. On April the 20th, town staff discovered the mandatory notice of the new development sign had been pulled from the ground and left leaning against the building, essentially removing it from prominent place. I wrote an email to staff about this and copied council. It should be in your package. Staff contacted the applicant and immediately reminded them that their legal obligation to keep the sign prominently displayed. The response? No action. Not only was the sign not properly restored after the warning, but on April 30th, I reported the sign was knocked down, face down, as part of the developer's actions on the property. This is not a minor oversight. It's a flagrant lack of transparency and a direct show of disrespect towards town staff, our bylaws, and the residents of Sydney, especially neighbors who are adjacent to this project. If an applicant cannot or will not follow the simplest rules of public notification, how can this council trust them to manage a multi-million-dollar construction project that will disrupt this neighborhood? How keep supporting going forward? What is the result of this lack of signage? Confusion from community members who are watching the project. The lack of signage implies that there is no further consideration for the proposal. It contradicts the developer's obligation to have the project actively be considered by council. The obligation is seriously compromised as it mutes the voice of potential interested parties. Also, it sets a precedence for other future developers. I mean, what are the repercussions of not following your signage requirements for new development applications? The sign is back up, I do note that. However, now it's leaning against the bush and only visible to southbound traffic. Again, a lackadaisy effort on behalf of the developer to comply with town development approval obligations. And all this time, the developer brands itself with a big sign on the property. It sits there perfectly visible to everyone who drives by, in full view by every passerby. I kind of find this insulting. This lack of respect for rules is directly reflected on the lack of respect for the land. I note that I saw the mayor's picture in the was on the internet or a news thing about the new Marriott Hotel that is it was just built across the highway. This building is nearly 70,000 square feet, put that in perspective, this new project proposed by the proponent is 70,000 square feet, whereas the Marriott one, which is across the street from the hotel, is only 78,000 square feet. So they're kind of close, but I do admit the Marriott building is slightly bigger, but there is a big difference. The Marriott property sits on 3.5 acres of land, whereas the applicant wants to put the same volume of units, same density, into one single acre. We're looking at a project that is over 3 times more dense than the Highway Side Hotel, but being forced into a residential block. The Marriott Florida area ratio is about 0.5. This proposal is about 1.68. By my calculations, this density of RM6 would require, if the project goes forward with the density that respects the RM6R, which are currently in place, this project would be 40% smaller. If it's R7, which is being proposed, the project would be 23% smaller. But because of the bonus density, we see this massive increase in density. What I'm just asking for here simply is that the applicant respects the rules on posting the application and respects the community neighborhood on that. When I highlight the difference in density, what I'm trying to say is that this project has massive impact on a simple neighborhood block. I think it's very critical that the proponent properly advertises this, and I think there should be repercussions because obviously they're not responding to staff requests. Thank you.
Thank you for coming forward this evening. I'll call for a second time for any speakers. Good evening.
Good evening. I'll adjust down a little, being shorter. David Calverley, I'm a resident of Sydney. And I just want to say thank you for the opportunity to speak relating to item 12A. And I accept that I did send in a written submission. I try not to duplicate too much, but I'd just like to emphasize a little bit of the work or the thoughts that I had. And I do want to say thank you to Council for very quickly bringing this to the attention of the citizens of Sydney. I think it was well done. You didn't have a lot of time before this came up, and the staff did a really good job. I'd just like to make it clear, I'm not opposed to recreation facilities. I'm really not. I enjoy them. I think expanded recreation services on the peninsula may be a really good, legitimate, long-term need. But that's not the issue. The issue is process and consultation and a public mandate for $14.2 million worth of borrowing. Commitment affecting taxpayers in all 3 municipalities. That's a lot of money. And when I looked at this, I went to the minutes of the Peninsula Recreation Commission because that's where it came from. And I went carefully through the minutes, and I noted that several times the basis of the report on which this was put forward was requested. Please give us the data so that we can talk about it. It was promised. It hasn't appeared. At least it hasn't appeared that I could find it. And that concerned me. It really did. It seemed that much of the support for this proposal, often referred to as strong public desire, came from the proposal or the survey conducted through Central Saanet's broader civic redevelopment consultation related to Hovey Road. Now, in that proposal, or that survey, they got approximately 845 to 876 people. I've seen both numbers in various places. That sounds substantial for a survey. It's 1.9 or 2% of the population that we're talking about out on the peninsula. But that raises the question, was it statistically representative of the area that the Peninsula Recreation people are looking at? A statistically valid regional survey, and I wasn't great at statistics when I did engineering. Other people are better at it. But to my mind, you should have a proportional representation from Sydney, North Saanich, Central Saanich. You could have transparent methodology. Demographic balancing. That's very important. I mean, how many came from Sydney? How many came... No, my thinking is most of them came from Central Saanich. There was no input. I don't know, because that report isn't out there in that detail. You should have a stated margin of error and a confidence level. That's fairly basic when you do a survey. And a clear separation between identifying recreation needs and support for taxation and borrowing. That survey was, what would you like to see? And I think, you know, other surveys have been done, and the survey that was done by Sydney on 30 kilometres an hour was exceptionally well done. And the analysis was presented correctly. I'm sure that the written submissions that you're looking at this evening have been gone through by staff, and you know which ones came from Sydney and which ones didn't come from Sydney. I'm sure that that was done. And I thought to myself, I was in business, and if I was an entrepreneur and I was looking at opening a recreation facility, a business in this area, would I personally go out and borrow $14 million to do it based on this survey as a market survey? And the answer would be no. I think, you know, look at the annual costs and whatnot. They're not insignificant. When added up, the carrying costs for long-term projects can be measured actually in weeks of people's spending on groceries. I think, quite honestly, a project of this scale should proceed with the clearest possible democratic legitimacy, and that means a referendum. A referendum would give equal voice to residents in all 3 municipalities. It would provide a direct public mandate, and it would strengthen public confidence in the final decision, whatever that decision is. And if public support is truly strong across the peninsula, a referendum would confirm that. So again, I ask that Council not approve this municipal consent and instead support a peninsula-wide referendum which can easily be held later this year. Thank you for the opportunity to present.
Thank you for coming forward. I'll turn for a third time. Any other speakers this evening? Please come forward.
Good evening. Name's Eric Diller, resident of Sydney. I'm also here to speak to item 12A. And yeah, when I first heard about this, I thought this is a great idea. But the more I thought about it, and the more I talked to my neighbors and family about it, and the more that I recognize that what we really need out here on this end of the peninsula is another aquatic facility. I mean, we have a great one with Panorama, but you try and get some lane swimming times in there, it's tough. And having kids in Piranhas, you know, the Commonwealth pool is also fully booked much of the time. What I don't see in this proposal is a willingness to work more strongly with the school district 63. I feel as though for what they're proposing, this could be a great facility if it was part of something else that the community could then have access to. Yeah, I really liked David Caverly's points that a referendum should be considered for a project of this scope and the money that's involved. And so I'll just finish off by saying that I am not in favor of this. unless there is some really broad public consultation involving all of the residents of this end of the peninsula. Thank you.
Thank you for coming forward. Does anyone else wish to come forward, please?
Hi, Gwen Davies, Sydney. I'd just like to reiterate my opinion is in full agreement with the last two speakers regarding the recreation center that's proposed. I don't know if anybody read my letter to council, but the Central Saanich population is 50% more than Sydney and 50% more than North Saanich. So if we're doing a 1/3 split, I think we're putting in a bigger piece of the pie, 4.7 million. I also think that given Sydney's senior population, we're not going to get the use out of it. I think it's solely for the benefit of Central Saanich. And I'd like to know, I haven't seen what the proposed or estimated usage of this facility is going to be. And if it's going to be around the same amount as the active transportation plan, which was 3% of cyclists, I don't think it's good value for money. We managed to squash most of the active transportation plan, which dodged us $10 million. This one we could be in for $4.7 to $5 million. Then there's the new city hall that's proposed. How much is all this going to cost? I think we could spend more money on revamping Panorama and getting a better facility, better value for money. So put me down as a big no. Thank you.
Thank you for coming forward. Not seeing any other speakers, I'll close the public participation period and thank everyone for coming forward this evening. We're next turning to the bylaws section, and we have two this evening. Under 8A, we have bylaw number 2312, the financial plan 2026 to 2030. We have considered this at a previous meeting, and we have a recommendation. Councillor Duck.
I so move the recommendation that the bylaw be adopted.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? Seeing none, those in favor? That carries unanimous. Thank you. And under 8B, we have bylaw number 2313, tax rates 2026. Again, this arose out of our financial plan, and we've discussed at a previous meeting and passed first three readings. So I'll turn to Councillor Dutt.
I move that the bylaw be adopted.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Those in favor? That carries unanimous. Thank you. The next item on our agenda is under 9A. That's Development Variance Permit Application number DV 100391 at 10181 Wildflower Place to retroactively allow an increase to the maximum allowable fence height in the front and exterior side yards. Council members and members of the public will recall that the applicant at a previous meeting came forward and removed the request for a variance on the north side. They're lowering that fence. We've gone to local notice to residents. We've received no written we have the one written submission this evening, but we have received no other submissions. And that submission we received this evening was in support. We have a recommendation. Councillor Dutt.
I move that the application be approved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. All in favor? Sorry, discussion? Go ahead.
Okay, thank you, Mayor. Yeah, thank you. And thank for the applicant for making that adjustment with the neighbor for the fence. And it does show that they can be adjusted to meet the zoning requirements. Why I'm struggling with this one in particular, and this is to the applicants, this is not their issue. This is nothing that they've done. They've inherited a problem, so to speak. But where I'm struggling with this is that you have a contractor and a developer that seem to intimate that they didn't know they need a permit, they didn't know what the regulations were, and I'm having a hard time believing that. And even if that were true, it is incumbent upon them working in our community to do things by the proper standards, and this didn't happen here. So my struggle with this is that we're basically allowed, and it may seem minor to some people, but it's not, in the sense that there's no accountability or responsibility from the developer and contractor. If this gets approved, they just walk away and potentially do it somewhere else in the community. Maybe it's a different variance in a different building. And so I think it sounds like maybe the rest of council might be in favor of it, but with as far as the owners go, although I sympathize with what the situation has left you with, my hope would have been that they'd be forced to come back and fix it and put it to where it needs to be and have to pay that cost. And because I think they do need to be held accountable, because I think we should be holding people to the proper standards that they're supposed to operate in our community with. So for that reason, I will not be supporting the motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Any further discussion?
Yes,
Councillor O'Keefe, please go ahead.
thank you. Yeah, I agree with pretty much everything Councillor Garnett said. This also troubled me when we initially discussed it, and while I'm sympathetic to the owners, it's really ultimately incumbent upon them to comply. And I guess I worry about others coming forward, and that we're setting the standard that people can just say, oh, sorry, I didn't know about it, and we're going to go along with that. And I just think that that's a dangerous precedent to set. I think it's up to the homeowner to come into compliance, and if there's additional costs, they should be looking to going back to the developer and said, hey, you advised us incorrectly here, and we want you to fix it. So I'm with Councillor Garnett on this one. I don't think we should approve the variance.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Duck, please.
Yes, I agree with my colleagues. They're absolutely right. That we often have approached this problem, and many times before, with variance post fact, and that's the challenge we face. So, but in this case, I don't think it's incumbent on the new owners. They're not the original owners. They purchased this property with the understanding that everything was done as required, and only found out subsequently when staff identified the problem here. So they're caught between a rock and a hard spot, and they have no alternative. They can't go back to the contractor because they didn't hire the contractor in the first place. They just bought the house. And so I don't think they have any avenue for reevaluation or tearing down the fence. The fence will be completed. That was part of the purchase of the house. And they're just trying to find a way to go forward. As my colleagues have identified, they've at least adopted to their neighbors as to what may be reasonable there. I go by this property daily. The fence next door to the east is on the same development and is in concurrence with the thing, and as this will be, and the neighbors around that, they only have two other neighbors that are impacted by it. The one with the hedge to the north, which they've come to terms with on lowering the fence site, and the other neighbors across the street, which the fence is at a distance. So I understand my colleagues' concerns, and I expressed those same concerns when we had stairs to beaches and trees and such. So this is not the owner's problem in this case. This is a problem we have in our community of identifying developers and builders that are not following the rules we find. We need to find a way to resolve that impacts them, not the people that suffer the consequences, which in this case are the owners. Thank you.
Thank you, councillors. Any further discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. Those in favor? Opposed? Councillor Garnett and Councillor O'Keefe are opposed. The motion carries. Thank you. I'm turning next to Mayor's report. I have one item to speak to this evening, Council. It was on Saturday, May 2nd, that we learned of the untimely and unfortunate passing of Langford Councillor Lillian Spock. Lillian was serving her 7th term on Langford Council, and Lillian also served on the CRD board, and I had the opportunity, good fortune, to work with Lillian this term. Was happy to appoint her as Vice Chair of the Parks Committee. She had a remarkable passion for the regional parks, spoke at every meeting, every parks meeting, in a very positive way. Lillian was a long-term member of Langford Council. That Langford, as we know, one of the fastest growing municipalities in the province. over many, many years. And Lillian had a passion for seeing her community grow in a wise and responsible way, and brought forward many initiatives. And so at this Wednesday's board meeting, I will be providing a eulogy for Lillian Spock for the CRD board. But I wanted to acknowledge, because I know some of you, his colleagues, had also knew Lillian and worked with Lillian. I first met Lillian Spock when serving on council back in the 2009 to 2011 term, and sat as the council representative to Crest. And Lillian was a second-term councillor at the time. We weren't having particularly fun times at Crest in those days, but Lillian was passionate then and carried it through. And as in talking to colleagues, Lillian was a mentor to many who served in recent years. So we want to remember Lillian in a good way. I will next turn to council reports, and Councillor Duck, who has a verbal update for the South Island Prosperity Project.
Thank you, Mayor. Yes, I sit as the council's liaison to the South Island Prosperity Partnership, not project, and chair the Municipal Partners Committee, which is all the participating municipalities are represented there, and oversee the actions of SIPP and its board. I also sit on the SIPP board as the representative from that committee. In the last meeting with the municipal partners, it was made clear by the SIPP representatives that there's going to be much more recognition and key findings to be forwarded to the municipal partners, indicating how successful SIPP has been. And just as an example, there are two offshoots to SIPP, which SIPP has created. One is Coast, which looks in terms of water development, and the Indigenous Prosperity, which is looking at the development of Indigenous businesses in the area. And interestingly enough, Coast has been successful in attracting, I think it's in the amount of $6.2 million in investment for in this region, which is very successful. They've been very active in the defense contracts have been coming out of the federal government. And this is, sometimes we hear about Coast and all the success there, or similarly its partner IPC and their success in developing Indigenous businesses. And we don't relate back to the fact that these were projects developed and delivered by the South Island Prosperity Partnership, and very successfully. And they are a great facilitator in economic development for our region. And I just see that becoming more and more evident in the work they're doing. And I think to my colleagues in council, we'll see more representation as they move forward into their sort of second 5-year term as to what can be accomplished by this organization. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Duck, for the update. I'll turn to colleagues if there are any questions or comments. Not seeing any, we'll turn to the next item. So we're turning to committee reports under number 12 now, under 12A. We have the PRC matter before us. This is a referral, so we did consider it at the April 20th, Committee of the Whole meeting. At that meeting, Council referred it to this meeting to allow 3 weeks until today for the opportunity of public input. We have received 33 written submissions as of that were placed on the agenda last Thursday, and as indicated during approval of the agenda this evening, we approved another 9 submissions, and we did have speakers during public participation as well this evening. So this is referred to council to this meeting, and the recommendation that the CRD is requiring from council is whether to consent or not consent to the CRD adopting bylaw number 4761, Sandwich Peninsula Recreation Services loan authorization bylaw number 1, 2026. So, Councillor, while we have had considerable discussion at a previous meeting, if we could put a motion on the floor either way, we will have a chance to deliberate. If the motion does not succeed, we would turn to the alternate motion to consider. Councillor Duck, please.
Yes, and I so move that the council not consent to the CRD adopting bylaw number 4761, Sandwich Peninsula Recreation Services DCS Recreation Facility, loan authorization bylaw number 1, 2026.
I second it.
Seconded by Councillor Novick. I'll turn to the mover and seconder to speak to the matter, please.
As we've heard from the public, and I think they appreciate the opportunities we heard in public participation today, the opportunity to give some feedback. And in reviewing that feedback, the number of letters, as the mayor mentioned, almost 2 to 1 in favor, against the consent going forward. And I think most of the people accept that recreation services are required here, but saw that the rush to get this done was not well developed or well supported with materials. And this council actually asked for some of those materials at that April 20th meeting. We've yet to get them. Those 2 pieces of information were a breakdown on construction costs and understanding what the funding mechanism was.
Sorry, Councillor Duck, I am going to interject there. While council may have spoke to those matters at the meeting, a motion arising to that effect was not made. A motion arising was made to request specific information, and that information was received at the subsequent council meeting.
Right, and the proponents did not present that information.
They presented the information that was requested under the motion arising.
Yeah, okay. Insufficient information has been provided to us. So as was identified in public participation in a number of the letters, that I think this needs to go to referendum and get more visibility and more understanding of what's to be accomplished by this project. As is indicated, and I am in favor of recreation facilities, and I've worked in that world a lot, and I appreciate the need for them, but I just don't see this one getting the information to the public that has been requested. I'll leave it at that for now. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Novick?
Thank you, Mayor. As noted, I'm opposed to this as well. Went through all the correspondence, listened carefully to those who spoke. The general consensus is, in my view, that while people do appreciate recreation facilities, and it's never a bad idea to have more recreation facilities, providing the costs are reasonable, providing we can afford it, providing we have sufficient time to put it through the appropriate processes. And as mentioned by my colleague, that's not been the case in this situation. It seems to me that this may have been pushed through as a way to facilitate the construction of the Central Saanich Municipal Precinct, which is sort of a panoply of varying services. There's fire service, police service, municipal offices, council chambers, etc. And they want to throw a 10,000 square foot recreation facility in the middle of that. I think it's 60,000 square foot construction. It makes little sense to me. Whether the facility is needed or not, I don't think that's the right place for it. And because it's in such a facility, I believe the costs are excessive. Works out to well over $1,400 a square foot, which does not seem reasonable for a large empty room, which is going to be filled with either weights or other equipment necessary to facilitate the activities that are contemplated there. It's not a complex structure we're talking about, it's a room. So for those reasons, I feel this is the wrong bylaw we're being asked to support at the wrong time for the wrong facility in the wrong place. So for those reasons, I can't support it.
Thank you, Councillor Novick. I will turn to Councillor Renewal.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. I guess I feel like I've been fairly close to the issue, having not this term, but the previous term, having served on the Peninsula Recreation Commission. And so I feel like this has been a long time coming. And I say that because the Peninsula Recreation Commission is a body representative of the three communities. So there are 3 directors, 3 commissioners from Sidney, 3 commissioners from North Saanich, 3 commissioners from Central Saanich. That body is responsible for the management of recreation facilities, not limited to Panorama, but to recreation facilities on the peninsula. And frankly, that's their role, to ensure that recreation facilities are available to meet the services, the demands of the peninsula. And so it was my expectation when I left the PRC that the individuals who followed me there would look at everything that came to them and the Recreation Commission sort of through that lens. You know, not necessarily what's best for Sidney, but this is what we often hear in this greater CRD community, is we want to see these municipalities, these 13 municipalities working together on initiatives. The Peninsula Recreation Commission is a pretty good example of that. It's 3 municipalities working together to provide recreation facilities on the peninsula. I recognize what's proposed is in Central Saanich, but we all recognize Panorama, the facility itself, is in North Saanich, fairly close and convenient to residents of Sidney, I'll add. We recognize that the Recreation Commission manages space at SD63's North Saanich Middle School here locally, but also at Green Glade, a former SD63 school in Sidney. And so, boy, it must have been a tough conversation in Central Saanich when they were looking to fund Panorama itself. It must have been a really challenging discussion for residents of Central Saanich, because I get it. I get residents of Sidney and potentially North Saanich struggling with spending almost $5 million each community on this undertaking to address recreational needs. But I remind my colleagues that it's not just recreational needs of Central Saanich, it's of the Peninsula community. So I'm confident that through the Recreation Commission's initiatives and undertakings to drive their strategic plan, to consult with the user community around that plan, around the needs assessment that they also undertook, that having had a seat around that table, it was illustrated that there are indeed constraints around the existing recreation facilities, and that adding to capacity was going to be inevitable. This is an opportunity because there is a civic structure being built, the cost of which I think PRC can probably take advantage of some synergies while they're building potentially together if this were to move forward. So I continue to look at this through a positive lens. I would appreciate it if, not out of order, if perhaps the mayor could again speak to the process that we're at today. And I say that with regard to having heard a couple of speakers suggest that this should be a referendum issue. It's not this body's decision whether it's a referendum issue. We have been told that of the 3 mechanisms to have made this decision, that we are to use municipal consent. So that applies to Sidney, North Saanich, and Central Saanich equally. Municipal consent is the mechanism. It's not a referendum, and it's not the AAP, the alternative approval process, which was another option. But perhaps if the mayor would be so generous as to reiterate how we arrived at that point in the decision process, it may help to alleviate concerns that we're not giving a fulsome consideration using municipal consent process. I'll leave my comments there. Thank you, Mayor.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Rentoul. And I don't think I'll speak at this time. For one reason is, while I could describe process, and I do intend on doing that when I do take my turn to speak, I will also be addressing other related factors on whether I support or whether I don't, and that rationale. So rather than talk about process and perhaps veer off into some motivation, we do have a next speaker. I will turn to Councillor O'Keefe first, please.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm inclined to support the motion that's on the floor. And, I want to first start by saying that I acknowledge that PRC is a shared service. And so my reservations are not necessarily about funding a facility that is in central Saanich. My concerns are more broader than that. In making my decision on this, I replayed the answers we got from PRC at their presentation. I watched the responses they gave to North Saanich Council. I looked at the needs analysis. I looked at PRC or the PRC previous minutes and other reports on this. And so my view on this is kind of shaped by that. This particular initiative came from the PRC strategic plan, which was to explore cost-effective opportunities to meet indoor community spaces and identify gaps in central Saanich. And it said that this may require further feasibility analysis and or partnership discussions. So in the info that I looked at, I didn't see much on what further analysis or options were considered before landing on the option to build the facility with the Central Saanich Town Hall. When we asked about expanding existing Panorama Rec, it was suggested by staff that that was problematic due to the neighbors and the potential impact on their views. To me, that's not a valid reason to not explore the expansion of space and programs at Panorama. It wasn't clear to me why there can't be further expansion at Greenglade. Another argument given against expanding at Panorama or Greenglade was that it wouldn't deal with the issue of distance to facilities that Central Saanich residents incur. And there was a desire to have facilities within a 10-minute drive. But when I look at the distance to Panorama from various places, Brentwood Bay, it's 12 minutes from Brentwood Bay to Panorama. It's a little bit longer from Keating or Tanner Ridge, 14 minutes. From my place in North Sydney, it's 12 minutes. Deep Cove, it's 12 minutes. So it's not just Central Saanich, parts of Central Saanich. There's other areas of the community that have more than a 10-minute commute. It's true that Greenglade is closer for Sydney and North Saanich. However, the gym there, which is popular, it's small and not as well equipped. So perhaps expanding that might take some pressure off. It wasn't also clear to me what had been done to look at utilizing space in the school systems in Central Saanich. This was actually one of the recommendations in the needs analysis. CRD staff advised that schools were problematic, though, because their space was not available during school hours. However, when you look at the needs analysis, it showed that there was a desire for more programming in the evenings and weekends, so it seemed to me that school space might work. There's also a center in Brentwood Bay that caters to seniors. It didn't seem to me that that had been fully explored. I guess in looking at I looked at one of the minutes from a PRC meeting when they had talked about this. And what I learned from that is that Central Saanich actually approached the PRC in the spring of 2024, which was a year before the facility and needs assessment was done. And so they were talking back then about a partnership involving Central Saanich's Town Hall. And in the fall of 2024, PRC directed staff to explore that. And once that was decided, I didn't see any evidence of further research into other options. In fact, when I looked at the PRC minutes from September 18th, 2025, it stated, while alternative options to improve recreation access on the Southern Peninsula may exist, their feasibility and effectiveness remain uncertain. Further analysis at this stage would risk delaying delivery of a strategic plan priority and could compromise PRC's ability to partner on a project already underway. So the appearance from my perspective is that there was no significant consideration of other options because all focus was on accommodating the town hall project in Central Saanich and their project timeline, and that's a concern to me. Just a few other things, financial concerns. You know, one might argue that the annual amount is relatively small for Sydney taxpayers. However, what we hear is that people are getting pummeled with additional tax increases, not just from the town, but from other organizations that make up their tax bill, the school district, CRD, hospitals, all these things mount up. I'm also have concerns about borrowing for a joint construction project, and if their cost overruns, how will that impact Sydney taxpayers? I have concerns about the operating costs. CRD staff mentioned that they're hoping that the additional revenue will cover the additional operating costs. However, I didn't see much evidence of that. I understand that they expect a 10% increase in revenue, but that doesn't seem to me to be enough to cover the additional staffing and overhead that would be required for a 10,000 square foot facility. Other factors, we've got other things in our own backyard to worry about. We also have a new town hall to build. We'll need to be looking at what we're going to do with the Sydney Pier. There's a lot of things on our plate, and I'm concerned about moving forward with something like this when I don't feel that the PRC has done enough to investigate other options. Unlike some of my colleagues, I don't think that this is something that should go to referendum. I think it's something that PRC needs to take back to the drawing board and take their focus, it's the focus that they had on incorporating this into the town hall, and seriously look at some other options. And I think that's it for me. Thank you for the time.
Thank you, Councillor O'Keefe. I'll turn to Councillor Duncan and then Councillor Gurnett and myself.
Thank you. I'll be voting against this motion as it stands. I don't think this was a question. While I agree that typically a borrowing cost, and particularly something for the 3 municipalities, may be appropriately to go to a referendum, when I look at the sampling of the responses that we already got, I feel it was different from when they went to a referendum with Crystal Pool, when people seemed to understand that their municipality was the one that was taking out that borrowing cost for that one facility. But because we have a tri-municipal area, I felt a lot of the letters seemed to think that the entire borrowing was Sydney, and that this was entirely a Sydney-driven project. And I worry that doing so, we would again get lots of data, but it wouldn't be good data because it would still again be people who misunderstood what they were actually voting on, how the PRC works, that it is a CRD borrowing, a committee that belongs to under the CRD and not under Sydney itself. And I worry it would be a misleading kind of exercise for that reason. I think people are also unclear that this was not something, because it is not a Sydney project, borrowing for this, the CRD borrowing for this, doesn't change Sydney's priorities on our capital at all. It doesn't take away from any capital plans that we might have one way or another. And so that doesn't factor into it. It factors solely into whether we think this is good for the recreation facilities, and only for the recreation facilities as they exist under the Peninsula Recreation Commission. And that is entirely the scope of the decision we are making. I did say last time we discussed this at the Committee of the Whole that among my demographic, the question is actually, will we get another pool? Because getting swimming lessons, it's like winning the lottery. And the CRD said that that's just not even something, or the PRC, it's not even something they're looking at, the expenses. We do have the example of the Crystal Pool to look to. And so again, this facility is not, again, a question of, but if we spend money on this facility, will we be taking away from our potential to build some other type of facility, a pool or a skating rink or something else that we currently might feel we're under-resourced in? It makes no difference. It's not on the radar. It's well outside what we could ever possibly borrow. If we think 14 million for a weight room is a lot, a pool is a no-go. So for that, I had to kind of I'm looking at what the real question was. And the question is not whether we can retrofit one of the other buildings, because the point is that in the tri-municipal area, Central Saanich has the same population as Sidney and North Saanich put together, and yet is the one municipality that lacks this particular type of recreation resource. And while they definitely have other resources that we don't have, we do hear from our citizens that they feel that lack too. And so what I feel we hear when we hear from our citizens is that we do want our resources to be duplicated as they go along the peninsula to the extent that we can, because proximity is important for certain types of activities. And that was something that we were being told was the main driver, was the transportation to these facilities. I think it's important that people realize when governments look at transportation, they don't mean everyone with cars. They actually have to consider all of the people who live in a community, which includes many of those who can't drive, who can't afford a car or lack the mobility to do so, or the age. Many people who are under the age of driving can go to their lessons on their own. And so what we strive to do is put facilities nested throughout them so that they're within a certain transportation distance for those who are not driving a personal vehicle. And this location is particularly good because it is central in Central Saanich, where many people can access by bus. This is a location where many of the First Nations who are underserved in almost every way can get to, and that's very important. This is also a younger municipality than our municipality, and so some of the families who are saying they're getting off work or they're getting off school and they're having to come up to Sidney to use facilities there after their work, they could actually use something that was in their own community. Central Saanich is building more family housing and multifamily housing. It's also the only place with supportive housing. Again, a lot of people who don't have cars. So what we're looking at is trying to get a facility into a location where people are currently underserved. And that's why looking at the capacities of the existing places to be renovated is somewhat important in terms of just an overall goal for the PRC, but it doesn't have as much of an effect on this one. As has been pointed out before, the Green Glade facility that we have, which is a retrofit, is a 20,000 square foot facility. This is 10,000 square feet. And again, we have 20,000 square feet in a community half the size. So this is a matter of equity. The people of Central Saanich are currently paying the exact same amount that we are, and they lack a facility. So what we're saying is we're all going to, again, be paying the same amount of money, and then we will all have something in our own communities. I know that our schools are at capacity for the next 10 years, and then the school populations are supposed to decrease in SD 63. And so while getting facilities, some collaboration with schools might be a goal that we can look at because it might help us serve some of the kids for after school. It's not a really great strategy for the PRC because we know the schools need their own spaces, and some of those schools need to be rebuilt themselves. So having something that is purely under PRC's control is just a much better deal for the taxpayers because we know that space will continue to be there. And so for that reason, I think this was actually a good idea. I would like to approve it, and so will not be supporting this referendum. Thank you. Or sorry, I will not be supporting the movement to not consent. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Duncan, Councillor Gurnett, and myself.
Thank you, Mayor. And as one of the commissioners on the PRC, I'm going to take my time with this one. It's been a lengthy process. Just to add some context for the speaker about the referendum, because that's been discussed, it was my preference. What ultimately was the deciding factor for the rest of the commission was that it didn't fit the timeline with District of Central Saanich's path forward for building their building. So that was where the rest of the commission landed. For me, from the start, the bare minimum for me of moving forward with this project was to know that there was strong support from the residents of the District of Central Saanich. And there was a survey conducted, as was mentioned. There was pop-ups, open houses, all these things. And there was an assertion made that there was strong support amongst the residents. And as the primary beneficiaries, that was important for me to know. And so I requested the data, the survey that was mentioned. And through multiple meetings, it was told it would be provided, and it has been incompletely provided. The total survey response was provided, and the percentage of people who supported the Hovey Road civic site over Mount Newton, but not the recreation. But there was, again, strong support amongst the percentage that supported the Hovey Road. And again, requested the information was not provided. So up to this date, that survey information has not been provided, though requested. So based on that, I had concerns because I needed to see at least that the people we're providing this benefit for actually wanted the space and wanted, given the amount of money that's being spent on it. And then consequently after that, when we met in March, if you'll notice in the March 26th report, the indicative Ministry of Finance Association of BC interest rate that's quoted is from February 25th. And the Class E cost estimate from the consultant is February 27th. And these, of course, both predated February 28th, which was when the U.S. and Israel started to bomb Iran and subsequent closure of the Strait of Hormuz. So I was concerned about cost escalations, the global economic uncertainty that was unfolding. There's a large contingency of approximately $2.9 million in the project. But I've harkened back to the community safety building, which started off as a price of $10 million and ended up being $16.5. Appreciating a portion of that is the ambulance service, and they're paying that back. But given the economic conditions we're in, my concerns were not just that I didn't have the information I wanted, but also that I was concerned about cost escalations based on everything going on in the world. And there's so far nothing that's shown me that that's changing. And even if we signed a Kuzma agreement tomorrow that was favorable and the Iran war ended, months later that's still going to be a hassle. We have somebody in the White House who makes policy in the middle of the night on social media. So we have 2.5 more years of that. So what other impacts is our economy going to face moving forward? So I was, within that context, I had a lot of considerations on that and thinking about how that would impact. And yes, there's been a lot of talk. This is a shared service, and I think people don't seem to understand that part of it. The 3 municipalities share the service, and there's certain percentages every of them pay. We actually pay the lowest, lower assessment values, and first in population, and I think North Saanich pays the most. Or no, Central Saanich would pay the most on this, but in terms of actual cost for this, North Saanich residents would pay the most. And I was contemplating on the total borrowing. Although the loan authorization is 14.2, it's actually up to 15.2 because there is up to $1 million of capital reserve being spent on the project. So I think it's important to have the overall total number of what the project would be. And when you look at the numbers, $47.36 average household per year, and someone could say it's like $4 a month or less than $4 a month, and that's true. But when you look at the 15-year amortization, that works out to just over $710 approximately, if all things are equal over that time period per average Sydney resident. The debt servicing cost is approximately $1,360,000 per year over a 15-year amortization. This is based on the March 26th report for a total repayment of $20,407,000. Sydney's the annual requisition cost is $1,360,000 for all 3 municipalities, and our portion at 29.3 works out to approximately $398,484 a year, which, if you look at 2026 budget, would be a 2.4% tax increase if you just want to make a sort of a comparison based on numbers. But the cost of the taxpayers of Sydney over a 15-year amortization, all things being equal, is just under $5,980,000. That's the actual total cost at the end of it for Sydney's portion. And it's been spoken about the context, and yes, it isn't about capital expenditure, it's more about what this impact is for the taxpayer. So we do have the discussion of the town hall redevelopment happening right now, and what's not being talked about is the Beacon Wharf. It has a condition assessment this year, and so we don't know. We haven't seen anything. I mean, it looks fine, but we don't know how soon we're going to have to face that potential infrastructure and what the costs are for our taxpayers. I think it's important that we have, for me, it was important to have that context. And the District of Central Saanich Facility Needs Assessment, the Peninsula Recreation Facility Needs Assessment, and the 2022 to 2026 Strat Plan definitely the points are well taken by PRC staff or the Panorama Rec staff. There is a need in this other portion of the peninsula for this service. There's a definite gap there, and it's important that has to be addressed. And you look at the PRC mission statement from that strat plan. Panorama Recreation promotes individual and community wellness by providing recreation opportunities in an effective and efficient manner, reflecting the needs of our communities. And that is our role in the commission for sure. And the mandate, as pulled out from the December 2nd Central Saanich presentation, was to operate the various leisure and recreational programs and facilities in a manner the commission deems advantageous to the residents of the participating municipalities. And I read those and I thought to myself, within the context of everything else I've been thinking and looking at through this process, there's 3 words that don't exist at the end of either of those the mission statement or the mandate. And that are the 3 words, at any cost. And I think for me, it's troubling for me, because I'm really worried about the impact on our community in terms of what we have to do. And this is a shared service. And this won't affect capital expenditures in our community, but it will affect it does impact the taxpayer. Each and every person's going to have this cost on top of whatever costs go forward with whatever projects we move forward with. And as Councillor O'Keefe mentioned, our residents are being hammered. Like everything through what's gone on within Iran is in the cost of fuel, the cost of food, and it just seems never ending. And I feel a sense of overwhelming nature of thinking about this in terms of what people are going through. In particular, young families in our community, they're struggling to pay everything, and to add to their burden at this point in time. And I thought back to the last 2 years of our budget deliberations, which were the most challenging in my 8 years sitting here, and how there was a recurring theme of nice to have versus necessary or necessity. And for me, when I think of this, this would be nice to have 10,000 square feet of new space in a new building to provide that gap, fill that gap for Central Saanich residents. But part of my other role when I sit on the commission is I do, and I always take this approach, and everything that comes to us for requisitions is I consider and think about how this is going to impact the taxpayer in Sydney, because I represent Sydney residents and the taxpayers who pay for these requisitions and these things come forward. So my perspective on this is, with everything going on right now, I just think, and sure, you can say this will cost more in the future or this is the time to do it. But for me, it's not. It's just not the time to do it. I struggle, and I just, in all good conscience, cannot add this extra financial burden onto the taxpayers of Sydney. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Gannett. I will speak to this, knowing that 4 council members have indicated that they're not supportive of this, which would defeat in which case the motion would pass and it would not move forward. I'm going to be speaking in favor, opposed to the motion that's on the floor, and in favor of the recreation, going forward with the recreation facility. But as per Councillor Rintoul's request and my original intent, I did want to begin by speaking of process and a little bit with regards to jurisdiction, even though colleagues have touched on it. And so there are municipalities on the South Island, such as Saanich, such as Oak Bay, who operate their own recreation facilities. They have pools, they have rinks, the full range of recreation facilities. The population of the peninsula, of the 3 municipalities on the peninsula, is about 50,000, and the population of Saanich now is about 120 or 125,000. So it made sense back in the day when the Capital Regional District, as a regional district, was created in 1966 to provide services for the region, or sub-regional services that was more efficient, more effective to be provided on a regional or sub-regional basis rather than by the individual municipality. So, for example, we have water services, wastewater services, a regional park service. The landfill serves most of the 450,000 residents on the South Island. Those are all CRD services, and most of those services you have full participation by all 13 municipalities. But the CRD has many services that it operates on a sub-regional basis, and so the Saanich Peninsula Water Service is a sub-regional service for the 3 peninsula municipalities, and the CRD wastewater service is a sub-regional service with the 3 municipalities. The wastewater treatment plant for just the 3 peninsula municipalities is in North Saanich. And so these sub-regional services, the water, the wastewater, and the recreation service, have been in place for decades, and they have proved to be very effective and very efficient for those living on the peninsula. I had the opportunity to serve on council from 2009 to 2011, and I served on the PRC Commission for during that term. And one of the things I learned as a commissioner was that the commission is required, under its mandate, under its CRD mandate, it's required to do a 5-year strategic plan. And in the 5-year strategic plan done, I believe in 2011 or thereabouts, there was before that we formed a subcommittee to review the needs for recreation service in Central Saanich, because again the population was skewed, or the population was higher in Central Saanich, significantly higher than it was in either Sidney or North Saanich. Today the populations are about 13,500 in Sidney, 13,500 in North Saanich, and about 18,500 in Central Saanich. So it was put in the strategic, it was done through a needs assessment, through a subcommittee, and put in that strategic plan. Fast forward to the strategic plan that the commission did last term, when Councillor Renewal was serving as the council representative, I was serving as the mayor, and we have a citizen rep. Our citizen rep, Karen Frost, has served, had a career in CRD recreation facilities for over 20 years. And so she's actually very valuable to have at the table with the experience that she has in not just Panorama, but other CRD recreation facilities. So we have good representation from both council and citizens on the commission. And as Councillor Toole indicated, there are 3 members, mayor, councillor, and citizen from North Saanich, and the same from Central Saanich. But going back to the strategic plan that was set, Councillor O'Keefe made reference to, in fact, she quoted a line from it with regards to the desire to move forward with recreation facilities and to look into the feasibility of doing such. One of the things that's both people have submitted correspondence, people have spoken during public participation, have indicated data. There was a statistically valid survey done for the strategic plan. A third-party consultant is hired, and it determines recreation needs on the peninsula. And it came out of that recreation needs assessment statistically valid. For example, while there were a lot of residents who favored a pool, when you look at how recreation facilities are managed throughout Vancouver Island, the province, or the country, you find that you don't add a 3rd pool until your usage with your existing pools is at a certain level. So while there were many residents who wanted to see a 3rd pool on the peninsula, it wasn't good business practice. It wasn't good recreation business practice to go ahead and build a new pool prior to actually the data that is out there. And so the need was identified early, going back as early as 2010 or 11, and it was reaffirmed when we did the strategic plan with a statistically valid data for recreation facility in Central Saanich. In serving in 2011, the only recreation facilities were Panorama Recreation, the main facility in North Saanich. Green Glade actually arose as an opportunity in 2006. And so the commission signed shorter-term leases. It can only sign shorter-term leases with the School District 63 for the use of the facility. And that facility flourishes today, and I'm going to come back to that in a moment. But it was also during that 2010-2011 period that we were approached by School District 63, because at that time they had plans to rebuild North Saanich Middle School in its present location. And the province made an offer, the province indicated to the School District 63 that if they were willing to sign a 25-year agreement with a recreation provider, that they would add, it was either $1 million or $2 million to the North Saanich Middle School facilities, such as the home ec room, such as the art room, and there was other facilities there, such that the recreation operator could provide after hours in the evening and weekend programs. And that commission signed off on the 25-year agreement, which is in place today. And so Panorama is operating programs after hours at North Saanich Middle School ever since the North Saanich Middle School opened. I forget what year it was, either 12 or 13. Sort of thing. So Panorama has expanded over time. It expanded with the Greengate facility. One of the colleagues indicated that the Greengate is 20,000 square feet. I can remember using that facility back in the 2010 period. Of course, it's a gymnasium, a bit of admin area, and a lot of classrooms. And I think there was only about 2 classrooms or 3 classrooms in use at the time. Fast forward to today, we received on our last council agenda, by request of a motion arising that I made, a request for what the usage facilities at Greengate were for January, February, March. They were 11,500 drop-ins to 7 different programs. They were over 1,500 registrations for particular programs that are operated over multiple nights, or multiple days and nights, and that sort of thing. That is a beehive of activity. And Panorama Recreation, the commission that has been serving in council terms for decades now, has invested heavily in the Greengate facility. There have been multiple requests going back probably ever since 2006 or 2011. Why can't we add on more modern facilities, add on a swimming pool, or add on certain facilities? The challenge is that whether it's through the province or through the school district, the CRD can only sign leases of a limited nature. And the school district has the right to not renew those leases based on 2 things: whether it needs to reopen school facilities based on changing demographics, and it plans for the long term, it's plans 20, 30, 40 years out, or as they did with North Saanich Middle School, they sold the original North Saanich Middle School property in Sydney to help pay for the new North Saanich Middle School. The province had to approve that, and so we're in a situation now where former CAO, Sydney CAO Randy Humble and I met with the school district at the beginning of last term because we were looking for housing opportunities throughout Sydney, and we see the few acres beside the current Sydney Elementary School, and why couldn't we consider doing that? Well, there's an intention based on the age and the construction of the current Sydney Elementary School to build a future Sydney Elementary School, and it will be built in that open field. And then the land where the current school is will become vacant, and there may be an opportunity to do that. School District 623 does not have a date in terms of when the new elementary school would be. Thus, we don't have an opportunity to discuss recreation, municipal hall, any other potential uses we might wish to use on that property. It was considered at one time for the community safety building back in 2014 or 2015, but the school district said no because of what their long-term plans are. So, through the correspondence, through the speakers this evening, we've heard through people that all of us have met on the street over the last several weeks, why can't we add additional facilities to Greengate? Well, there's a limiting factor based on the nature of the lease there. Why can't we put the additional facilities at Panorama? Wouldn't it be cheaper to put these same facilities that we're looking at putting in Central Saanich, put them at Panorama Rec? Well, that was discussed during the strategic plan when we had the consultants' reports come back, and there are challenges there. That is a very active facility at present. There's a lot of parking spaces. There have been additions. I think it was a 10,000 or 12,000 multi-sport, the outdoor box or the outdoor sport court that was built. And I'm going to go back all the way to 2007 when the pool expansion occurred. And that pool expansion was I didn't go back and trace what the capital expenditure was, but the capital plan, or the project that was approved by the 3 participants in the service, was not only to have the second pool, but it was also to build a new foyer and to build a new connection between the two arenas, because it's been noted, and we had an accessibility audit done of the entire facility, which pointed out the accessibility challenges to the two rinks, to the two ice rinks that are at Panorama. There was a plan at the time of that pool project to enclose a large area from the new reception area all the way over to a new entrance and foyer, accessible entrance and foyer into the two rinks. Well, there was opposition to the height of the slide. North Saanich contested it, and it delayed the project some 2 years. And based on, it was approximately 2 to 3 years that it was delayed. And given the rise in costs of that delay, they weren't able to proceed with the expansion of the foyer and all of the covered areas to the ice rinks. Fast forward to determining a needs assessment. So during the strat plan, we decided that there were accessibility challenges for primarily one of the two rinks at Panorama. We had an outside consultant bring back 2 estimated designs for accessibility of the entire Panorama facility in North Saanich. There was 2 proposals. One was it $16 million, 15 or $16 million? The second one was between 27 and $29 million. And when you looked at the portion of what was originally planned back in 2007 for a new foyer and to connect the ice rinks, that had multiplied by several $1 million. And so if we don't go forward with this opportunity at this time, it is only going to get significantly more expensive. And now I'll finish off talking about process. And that is the Panorama Recreation Commission, as a 9-member sub-regional commission of the CRD, is required, when it makes recommendations, they have to be approved by the full 24-member CRD board. And so it was the 9-member Panorama Recreation Commission, after receiving reports and having presentations from the General Manager of Recreation and from the General Manager of Corporate Services in terms of what approval processes were available for the Commission to recommend to the board. There was referendum, there was alternative approval process, and there was municipal consent. The Commission approved municipal consent. Councillor Garnett made reference to one of the factors that weighed on Commissioner's mind was the timeline of the projects. Projects only become more expensive as they are delayed further out. This is a project that's been in the discussion and in place for some 2 years. But that wasn't my consideration for agreeing to municipal consent as a commissioner. The reason is every loan authorization going back at least to 2007, whether it was the pool expansion, whether it was the new multi-sport box that's about $6 million in Centennial Park, whether it was the $1.5 million heat recovery project that reduced GHGs by an enormous amount, all of those were approved by municipal consent. That is, the Commission recommended to the Capital Regional District Board that the loan authorizations go to the 3 municipalities for municipal consent, and that is what occurred. This is not out of the ordinary, the process that we're in now. And while I appreciate the indication through much of the correspondence we received, isn't more information involved. There is lots of information. Members of the public have accessed it, councillors have accessed it, but it goes back quite a ways, and it is quite involved and quite detailed. And quite frankly, the Commission as representatives is charged with going through that, with working with consultants, with working with Peninsula Recreation staff, which are CRD staff, to bring the best options forward. We are not purchasing the land in Central Saanich. Central Saanich is providing the land for this 10,000 square foot facility and parking spaces for this facility. If the Panorama Recreation was having to purchase additional land, this project would be much more expensive than it is today. So if we do not approve, if this motion succeeds and we do not consent to municipal consent, CRD, the province and CRD requires under sub-regional loan authorizations that if all the participants do not agree, then it fails. If it fails, it will go back to the CRD board, but the CRD board cannot reconsider the matter, that is, either an alternative approval process or a referendum, until 6 months have passed. So that will go forward to the next CRD board. I'm not sure if it goes back to the commission first, but then comes back to the CRD board, but there has to be a 6-month lapse if one consent process has failed and another consent process is to be approved. So it's not a decision for this council tonight to request a referendum. It's a process based on this being a CRD, sub-regional service within the larger CRD, where the entire CRD board makes the decisions on recommendations from the commission. I want to touch on some of the points that were brought out in the correspondence. Let Central Saanich pay for the new facility. It doesn't benefit Sidney residents. Well, it speaks to the needs that have been established for recreation facilities in Central Saanich. I did make reference to the main Central Saanich facility. I made reference to the pool expansion and other expansions on Central Saanich, that at the strategic plan it's not really feasible to add another 10,000 square feet of space. It is going to cause many other complications, and it doesn't address the inequity for Central Saanich residents in South Central Saanich to access, particularly by transit, additional facilities in Saanich. Panorama is at capacity near capacity in many of its programs today, in particular the weight room. So one of the uses that will be at the new facility in Central Saanich is a weight room. So it doesn't benefit. The thing is that Central Saanich residents have been paying their share of, which is based on 50% population and 50% assessed value. So they've been paying their proportional share of all of the recreational facilities on the peninsula. The main recreation facility in North Saanich, the Green Glade, 20,000 square foot Green Glade facility in Sidney, the programs that operate out of North Saanich Middle School. They do have the benefit of having the multi-sport box in Centennial Park, and they do have the benefit of a small number of programs. I believe it's called the Central Saanich Cultural Center, which is small community space that is in no way could be renovated to provide 10,000 square feet or gym facilities of that nature. That has been explored going all the way back to several commissions. So it's not a case of the municipality that if the Panorama recreation facilities in that municipality pays for it and the others don't. It's a shared it's a shared funding model throughout for all three municipalities for all the facilities. The other is that one of the comments was that no, it should be funded from user fees and membership. So all the recreation facilities, and Panorama is aware, the commission has been made aware of what Saanich does. What does Oak Bay do? What does Esquimalt? What does Juan de Fuca Recreation do? And most of the facilities are on about a 50-50 split between 50% paid by fees and memberships, and 50% paid by requisition or taxation of all the residents. Approve on condition of renovating at Panorama or Green Glade. I've spoken to that. Approve on condition include in the new municipal facilities in Sidney. This is Panorama Recreation. It's not a decision for Sidney to build recreation facilities with the sub-regional service. No, the town has more pressing, higher priority issues. Example, new town hall, Beacon Wharf, municipal works yard. One resident even spoke to Sidney economic development. Only essential projects. There has been some discussion at the table of that. We're talking about two different jurisdictional decisions. We're talking about decisions the CRD makes and its sub-regional services and the requisitions that you pay. When all of us receive our Sidney tax bills, there is a portion on it that says CRD requisition. The portion of the CRD requisition for the Panorama Recreation Facility for Sidney taxpayers in 2026 without this recreation facility would be $257 dollars and 66 cents. The requisition, if it would go forward for the 2027, would add 47.36, or in 2026 dollars, that would be an 18% increase to a total of $305. So, you know, residents are paying significantly. Each taxpayer is paying $257, just over $257 for the current recreation facilities on the peninsula. And this would be an increase of 47.36. One of the comments in both the correspondence and during public participation is that this is not fair because we're paying a 1/3 share. We're not paying a 1/3 share. In 2026, or the first year, Sidney would be paying $398,484. So that would be both the principal and the debt servicing costs. Central Saanich would be paying $528,287. So it's, as I say, the formula is based on population and an assessed value. The increases are greatest in North Saanich because the assessed values are higher in North Saanich. They're paying $73.19, would be an increase per taxpayer of $73.19, and Central Saanich is $61.66. There's criticism that the proposal, as the information has come forward to the respective councils, that there wasn't more information with regards to operating costs or future capital and maintenance costs. Panorama has a lot of experience at the facilities that it's operating, recreation. As one speaker, one of the colleagues mentioned tonight, there is, of course, the anticipation of an increase in revenue from operating this 10,000 square feet. And yes, there would be some additional operating cost and some future maintenance and replacement. But it is anticipated that given the revenue that the facility would generate, that it would be there wouldn't be anticipated significant future cost increases beyond the requisition increases now. Another comment in one of the correspondence is that this is the $50 increase. I appreciate the person was rounding off from $47 to $50 in perpetuity. It's not in perpetuity. It's $50 for 15 years of the borrowing. So it would be repaid within 15 years. What makes it most difficult, this decision most difficult for me, is the concerns over affordability, cost of living increases, uncertainty. Facilities, capital infrastructure has been built in municipalities during uncertain times for many, many years. We could go back to incredibly uncertain times in each of the decades in the past, yet capital infrastructure projects move forward. They have substantial contingencies, and sometimes those contingencies covered. Sometimes the contingencies aren't needed, and sometimes I can tell you that the Capital Regional District built the $786,000 core liquid waste treatment plant on time and only $10 million over budget, and that was because of an adjustment to it. So that was so the CRD, in my years of experience on the CRD, has been very effective at building capital projects on time and on budget. We built a $324 million health care facility at Hillside. The name is just escaping me, the Summit. That was on time and on budget. The CRD projects that have occurred previously at the commission have been on time and on budget as well. Mr. Edwards.
Sorry, Mayor. I just wanted to note that it's not a CRD project that they will be constructing. It will be Central Saanich's facility to manage. So I just wanted to understand where you're going with that point.
So this will be thank you for that, Mr. Edwards. So this will be owned by Central Saanich. I mean, the building will be owned by Central Saanich, but based on the CRD funding the operating, they will have, I'm forgetting the length of the lease.
It's 25 years with another 25, so 50 total.
Yeah, it's a 50-year lease. So CRD is in much shorter lease arrangements with the school board, but yes, they would be in lease arrangements with the District of Central Saanich for these facilities, but it is the capital payment for building the facilities that will be, in effect, the lease payments for up to 50 years. I've tried to cover most of the points within the that were brought out in the correspondence and the speakers this evening. I've tried to clarify the process. I believe that if we do not move forward, and sorry, there is two things that I want to add. One is the Green Glade facilities. There are Central Saanich users and North Saanich users of the Green Glade facility, because some of the programs, that's the opportunity where they can register for those programs, or they find it convenient to drop in based on how busy it is at that time. There may not be very many Central Sydney users based on the programs that are being run in this facility, but again, we are thinking about recreation facilities across the peninsula, and there being equity amongst the municipalities. I'll leave my comments there for now and turn to any second-time speakers. I'm not seeing any any further speakers, so I will look to call the question. Those in favor? Opposed? Councillor Duncan is opposed. Myself and Councillor Renewal is opposed. The motion carries. That is, Sydney will be providing a response to CRD that it does not consent to the municipal process, and this project will not be going forward under its current proposal. Thank you, Council. Thank you to the members of the public in attendance tonight or watching the meeting. We'll be turning to the next item on our agenda.
Point of order.
Yes.
Can I suggest a brief break?
We'll take a 5-minute recess. Okay, Councillor O'Keefe, I see you're back with us, and, or you were always with us, and we'll go on to the next item on our agenda. Thank you. We're turning to item 12B, which is the Committee of the Whole meeting, May the 4th. Councillor Duncan presided at that meeting. We're receiving the minutes on our agenda. We don't need to discuss those or approve those. We'll turn to you, Councillor Duncan, to take us through the three recommendations, please.
Thank you. Committee recommended, and I so move, that a trial conversion of the West Tennis Court at Iroquois Park to 2 dedicated pickleball courts, which is option A, with the South Pickleball Court aligned with the North Pickleball Court, be approved, subject to consultation with adjacent properties and the execution of an expectations agreement with the Victoria Regional Pickleball Association, confirming full project funding, oh my gosh, by the pickleball community, and outlining usage expectations and trial restoration obligations.
Do we have a seconder?
Second.
Any discussion?
Probably shouldn't.
We'll give you just a moment. I do see your hand, Councillor O'Keefe, but I'm going to turn to the movers first.
Oh, thank you. Sorry, there was a tickle in my throat. I think we had a very fulsome discussion about this. Poor pickleball. I think we were all very pleased that after all these years, we finally feel like the community is starting to come together around something that will work for both the tennis community and the pickleball community. And some modifications were made to the court design that I think will probably, again, help mitigate some of the concerns. And so I'm happy to move forward with the trial and see if some of the remaining concerns that people have about encouraging perhaps more use of this park might result in further noise problems. And if it doesn't, I would be really happy to be able to move forward with this. So by all means, the first step going on with the trial, I'm happy to support. Thanks.
Thank you. Turn to the seconder.
Thank you, Mayor. I likewise am happy to support this. This is a community-driven initiative, which is very nice to see. It's also a community-supported and funded initiative, which is even nicer to see as far as I'm concerned. And I think that it addresses a lot of concerns that some of the opponents of pickleball had raised. I doubt that the noise factor will be any more substantial than it already is. So I'm happy to go forward with this. It is still a trial process, and hopefully there'll be enough data to make a permanent decision in short order. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor O'Keefe, please.
Thank you, Mayor. I know we talked quite a bit about this, but there's a few other things I wanted to touch on. And just for, I know we had a lot of email traffic on this as well, so I hope my colleagues forgive me on reiterating some of that, but it's mainly for the public to understand, where my mindset is on this, that not opposed to pickleball per se. But after the last meeting, I went and I took a look at the video from November 2021, and that's when we last discussed pickleball. And at that time, staff recommended that Iroquois was not suitable for pickleball without sound mitigation measures. And so that's why they recommended that we look into sound mitigation. At the time, however, Council was concerned about the time it would take to look into sound mitigation. And so instead we directed staff to look at Rotary Park as an option. And we also requested Peninsula Rec Commission to include pickleball in their plans. And so since then we found that the airport wasn't suitable for, wasn't interested in pursuing pickleball at Rotary Park, and Peninsula Rec did build 4 courts at Centennial Park. So we're back to looking at Iroquois again, but we never did ask staff to do further investigation into the sound mitigation. And so my concern is that we're embarking upon a trial of over 1 year when we already know, or we have information that says that noise is likely to be an issue. Staff told us that in 2021 in their report, that although pickleball had been played for a number of years, that once there was 2 dedicated courts, there would likely be more noise and likely to increase. And staff reiterated that in their report. There's a suggestion that a hedge along the court has grown significantly, and it's hoped that that will help to mitigate noise. Sorry. However, my understanding is that hedges do not provide significant sound mitigation. Having said all that, I understand the reluctance from staff and perhaps colleagues to invest in sound mitigation measures that can be very expensive while we're running a trial. So what I would see this moving forward. I would agree to move forward with it, but that's if the surrounding area agrees. But I would like to see that there's going to be an opportunity for us to terminate the pilot if we start to get complaints from residents in the surrounding area. And so I presume that will be something that will be included in the agreement that we come up with, because I think it would be unfair to subject residents to a lengthy trial period just because we said we would do it until fall of 2027.
Councillor O'Keefe, would you like me to turn that as a question to staff?
Okay, sure, thank you.
Turn to Mr. Murphy, please.
Good evening, through the mayor. So yes, I've begun drafting the potential agreement, and so between the town and the Pickleball Association, and it includes dispute resolution mechanisms, with obviously the hope that should complaints start to accumulate, that we would start by working cooperatively with the association to attempt to come up with solutions, whether that's changing hours of play or whatever it might be. We would attempt to work collaboratively, but then if we can't find a resolution, then there is and will be a clause for the town to terminate the trial if we can't come to a resolution. And based on today's discussion, I've added in that the town could direct the installation of acoustic panels as another step in a dispute process, with the fallback being that if the town directs the installation of acoustic panels, that if the association doesn't comply, or again, if the acoustic panels aren't enough, then again, terminating the agreement will remain as an option for the town. And obviously the Pickleball Association has to agree to these terms to sign the agreement before we proceed. And that's all for now.
Does that help, Councillor O'Keefe?
Yeah, no, that gives me a little bit better feeling of comfort in that if it does turn out to be an issue, that we do appear to have some exit clause. So knowing that, I'm a little bit more comfortable in supporting the recommendation.
Thank you, Councillor. Any further, Councillor Garnett, please.
Thank you, Mayor. Through you to staff, I just want to confirm my sense of what you were saying there, because I'd moved a motion arising last time about acoustic panels and was hoping I was going to include it in recommendation 3, but a watered down version of what I presented and withdrew. So is it staff's intention that they will, as this is running through a trial, there will be some investigation done as to what the acoustic panel costs will be, or potentially could be?
Through the mayor, so already did a little bit of preliminary investigation today. The cost for acoustic panels, because, well, each panel has a cost, and then you need a whole series of panels, so it can add up to, I believe it was quoted, $8,000 to $15,000 to do 3 sides. So that's significant. There's also the potential of just doing the north side as one alternative. So we would look at any and all of those options. And yes, absolutely. So there are both SÁNEĆ and Allbay who have experience with acoustic panels, so we'd be talking to them. And definitely, if complaints start arising, then that's the next option that we'll be studying and bringing to the association.
Thank you. I appreciate that staff's undertaking that. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Duck, please.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. As you know, I wasn't part of the discussion of the committee of the whole, and I thought this was a very wholesome discussion. I really appreciate my colleagues' questions and information sought, as well as hearing from the 3 community organizations who are participating in this. I think that's remarkable and shows a great community effort to make this happen. So I'm glad to see this come forward, and I will support the recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you. Seeing no further discussion, I'll call the question. Those in favor? That carries unanimous. Thank you. Councillor Duncan, please.
I recommend that staff be directed to undertake consultation with property owners on Ocean Avenue across from the tennis courts.
Second.
Any discussion? Seeing none. those in-
Yes.
Go ahead, Councillor Keefe.
Yeah, I would like to propose an amendment to the motion.
Go ahead.
I would like the motion to read that staff be directed to undertake consultation with property owners within 110 meters of the proposed pickleball courts.
Do we have a seconder?
Second.
I'll turn to the movers.
Yes, so this is based on the previous staff guidance on this, where staff advised that it is likely that residences within 110 meters of pickleball courts would likely be impacted by the noise. So it seems reasonable, if we're going out for public feedback, that we extend it to those residences that staff have advised are likely to have some impacts.
Turn to the seconder. Any further discussion? I won't support the amendment. I'm satisfied with how staff have recommended going forward with the consultation. Seeing no further discussion, I'll call the question. Those in favor of the amendment? Opposed? Councillor Novick and myself, the motion carries. Look to call the question on the amended motion. Any discussion? Motion is amended. Those in favor? Opposed? I'm opposed. The motion carries. Councillor Duncan on the third recommendation, please.
I move that staff report back to council at the completion of the trial period with an assessment of noise impacts and user experience, and provide a recommendation whether the conversion should be made permanent and potentially expanded to 3 pickleball courts.
Second.
Any discussion? Councillor Keefe, you have your hand up?
Yes, just a question through you to staff. In some email traffic today, there was suggestion that there might be, staff might purchase a decibel counter to use that to measure the sound levels, which I think is a good idea. But the only other thing I wondered about is staff had previously mentioned that decibel levels in itself are not necessarily the only thing to measure. And so I guess just wondering what other sort of measurements might they consider in assessing the noise impacts.
Through the mayor's, so the primary measure will be complaints received and frequency of complaints and urgency of complaints, which is quite typical for our operations. But so yes, just the general experience, including staff observations and as I say, complaints received. And the dynamic will also be changing with the installation of a dog park nearby also. So we'll have to look at baseline, how that shifts as well.
Okay, great, thank you.
Thank you. Seeing no further discussion, I'll call the question. Those in favor? That carries unanimous. Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Duncan. We're next going to staff reports. We have 4 this evening. The first under 13A is the results of the neighborhood engagement, potential parking changes to Allbay Road and Bowden Road. We have a report from our Director of Engineering, Mr. Murphy. I'll turn to you, please.
Good evening. So from a previous council meeting, we had discussed a series of 4 potential options to manage the parking situation on Allbay Road. Council asked for 3 of those to be presented to the local residents to get their feedback. So we issued a letter in March, I believe, and so allowed a few weeks for feedback. All that feedback's been received and presented and summarized. And so in general terms, there was support for the no parking anytime on the curved sections of Allbay near Eden Place. There was support for time-limited parking on Bowden Road for the beach access, but much more opposed to the option A, which is no parking 8 a.m. to 4 p.m. on one of the 2 sides of Allbay Road. So we're bringing this back for council discussion on how to potentially proceed from here.
Thank you, Mr. Murphy. I'll turn to colleagues for questions. Councillor Novak, please.
Thank you, Mayor. Through you to staff, wasn't there some discussion of time-limited parking, 2 or 3 hour, I don't remember which, on one side of Allbay to try and ensure that there was sufficient parking for service vehicles, but that would also discourage long-term parkers during the day? Somehow that just disappeared from the recommendation.
Through the mayor, so the option that went forward to the residents was a full no parking 8 a.m. to 4 p.m. on one of the 2 sides. And the some of the rationale behind that was to keep a clear pedestrian path on the other of the 2 sides. So that was the option that went forward to residents. It was actually feedback from residents as part of this process that outlined, while they were opposed to that full restriction, they might, and I don't know the numbers, but at least some residents would be more open to time-limited restrictions on one of the 2 sides. So that came from the residents back. It was not a proposal to the residents. It came as a result of this consultation as an idea.
Okay, if that's the case, then why was it not included in the recommendation?
Through the mayor, so it wasn't broad or, a majority of support. It was an item that was mentioned as a possibility a few times. So the analysis presents the recommendations based on council direction from before, and as we see through this consultation and in past discussions with past consultations and feedback from the community, there is not going to be consensus support for any one option of that magnitude.
Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Duck, please.
Yes, if I may, just through you to staff. One of the letter writers asked the question about how this relates to other combined business residential areas, and I'm wondering if we have any examples of that in Sydney that could help people relate to this.
Through the mayor, so the most applicable example is the new residential parking permit pilot on 3rd Street on the edge of downtown. And so a residential parking permit is proposed generally when there is parking pressures from outside coming onto a residential street. So there's a demand for parking that is coming not from the residents themselves. So That's the case on 3rd Street. That is the case on Allbay Road for certain. There is parking pressures from the businesses that is impacting residential parking on Allbay Road. However, the difference between 3rd Street and Allbay is on 3rd Street, just given the nature of the developments, the residents themselves also have a demand for on-street parking. And so the pilot program is to prioritize residents' use of on-street parking over those external demands. Allbay is not the same, where every house has a driveway and multiple parking spaces. So it's not the same circumstance. There certainly would be many people, many residents who would likely hope for a residential parking permit. But it's not the same circumstances, and as with many things we do, if it's approved for Allbay Road, how is it not approved for the next road and the next road and the next road?
Thank you, Mr. Murphy. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor O'Keefe, please.
Thank you. Just a question, confirmation through to staff. So what I'm gathering from the report and your characterization of it is in regards to the, it seems like, would it be accurate to say that there's perhaps a philosophical or a belief that street parking in front of one's house should not be available to people that work in the area, even though the homeowner may have parking already through a driveway or whatever? That's kind of what I'm gathering from that and the feedback. Am I on the right page there?
Mr. Murphy.
Through the mayor, so we often, parking is a highly contentious issue everywhere, in every municipality and everywhere where there are parking issues, and many residents don't appreciate if street parking on their frontage is used by someone not themselves, and that's very normal, that's very understandable, and so at the same time, when we receive those concerns, our common responses, and this applies on every road in every municipality, is that street parking is not allocated to any one user. It is open, it's first come, first serve, and with a few exceptions when permits are brought in, but in general, street parking is not allocated, assigned, reserved, or dedicated.
Okay, thank you for that.
Thank you. Councillor Garnett, please.
Thank you, Mayor. Through you to staff. Thank you, Mr. Murphy, for answering all these questions. Just out of curiosity, when you're talking about you see a sign that says residential parking only. Does that always have to require a permit?
Through the mayor, so no, there is a variation that is just a sign that says residential parking only, harder to enforce.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
But does exist.
Well, apparently a lot of the people we work at this place, so they'd remove the signs, I'm sure. Yeah, that was where I was kind of going with that. With regards to the signage costs, I'm trying to recollect if that was to come out of the sign budget, or was that a cost outside of that?
Through the mayor, so we do have funds in the budget for Allbay Road, but
Yes.
they are for gravel shouldering,
Right.
so it would likely require a council resolution to use those funds for other purposes. So these were intended to come from the regular signage budget, but there are funds available if council wishes to direct those in another way.
Yeah, I looked today, there is 25 in the budget for this particular issue from the General Capital Reserve, but probably Mr. Izzy can confirm that. Because I thank you for answering my question earlier today, because I think there seemed to be a recurring theme about speed in and around the Eden Place. So thank you for answering that question about cost for speed humps, $6,000 each. And so do you think that it would be beneficial from a traffic safety point of view to have one on either side as you approach Eden Place to just, as apparently people aren't abiding by the 30-kilometer, but then you put in a speed hump, they pretty much have to, and that would increase safety at that spot on Allbay.
Through the mayor, so this is the first time that we've become aware of speeding concerns on Allbay Road. So they certainly may be there, and that's one of the downsides, if you will, of having external parking pressures, is that when the drivers aren't tied to the community, they can behave in different ways. So it's certainly possible that and with a curve, speed on a curve tends to feel a lot faster than it actually is. Now at the same time, we get many requests for traffic calming for speed humps. And again, it's how do you evaluate one road compared to another road? We are actually working on a policy for evaluating traffic calming requests, which would start with the neighborhood requesting consideration for traffic calming. Then we'd go through a scoring exercise, and if the scoring meets, and the scoring would consider things like proximity to schools, vulnerable users, speed, traffic volumes, all those things, and do a scoring process. And if it meets the threshold, then we would check in with the community again for what measures are proposed, and then list and prioritize subject to limited budget. So that's a process that would, if council adopts, would be equitable across, right, fair and transparent in how we evaluate these sorts of requests. So that's not to speak against speed humps in this location. They certainly could be, and in the current situation where we're evaluating traffic calming requests without an established policy like that, we do look at, is there a compelling factor? And certainly having a curve could apply. And so we can put out our traffic counter as an option to confirm. Oftentimes speed is perceived to be higher than it actually is, so using the traffic counter helps in those situations.
And one last question, if I may, Mayor. And this is just thinking outside the box. You can tell me if this is a really dumb idea. I'm okay with that. Would installing time-limited signs through the entire area be one possibility, and one that would even... I'm trying to think of something outside the box that would solve the broader issue, and do you think there's any merit to that?
Through the mayor, so anything's possible. It's where do you start and where do you stop? One of the concerns is, and even our hesitation in looking at, which otherwise is a great idea, the time-limited parking on Bowden, will just push vehicles somewhere else too, right? So it's how far do you have to expand the reach before people look into other solutions rather than parking further and walking further. So it's certainly possible. It's certainly an interesting idea, and it'd just be a question of how far would the extents go.
I'm thinking like all of Allbay, Jocelyn, Eden, even Lime Grove, because people may even decide to park there. It's like, I'm just thinking in terms of the whole entire area. And I mean, I don't know. I'm just trying to think outside the box to try and find some resolution to people's concerns based on all the letters that were provided. So thank you for that. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor. Seeing no further discussion, we have a recommendation. I'll turn to Councillor Renewal.
Thank you. I'll move the recommendations that no parking anytime signs be added on the curved sections of Allbay Road near Eden Place to increase pedestrian and driver safety, and that time-limited parking be introduced on one side of Bowden Road, south of Allbay Road, to maintain parking for the Bowden Road beach access.
Second.
We have it moved, seconded by Councillor Novick. If there was a desire, we would separate them, but I would wait for Councillor to indicate that. I'll turn to the movers first.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. I feel like we've spent a lot of time on this issue. perhaps disproportionate to some of the other challenges that the town faces. I know it's important to residents and the business community in the area. So my hope is, although I recognize this is not a silver bullet, and we could try and wordsmith this and make some amendments here and there to perhaps in an effort to make it better, but this is a good solid starting place. There's been lots of consultation with that community, and again, I feel like it's not going to be a one-step solution is going to fix everything. Here are a couple of initiatives that I think are going in the right direction. So I will support the recommendations. Thank you.
Thank you. Turn to the seconder, please.
Thank you, Mayor. I think this is a good start. It's been a long, complex discussion. I don't think that there is a one-size-fits-all solution. I think any solution is going to cause grief with one of the stakeholders in this situation here. But I think this is a good way for it to get started, and we'll see whether or not this mitigates some, if not all, of the concerns that residents have. If it doesn't, if it needs some tweaking, I'm sure that it will come back to this council at a later date with some tweaking recommendations. But for now, this is the way to go. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor O'Keefe online, please.
Thank you. Yeah, I'll support this as my colleagues have outlined. You know, disappointing that they didn't go for the other option about the no parking from 8 to 4. To me, that was the thing that was going to help address their safety concerns. But the sense I get from reading the letters is that there still seems to be this feeling that people own the parking in front of their residences and they don't like other people infringing on their territory. Because if it was a safety issue, that option A would have been the way to go. I appreciate, you know, other kind of suggestions about speed bumps, but I agree with staff. If we start to do that on one street, then, you know, we got to do it on my street and a whole pile of other streets that are having issues. So I think staff's idea about coming up with a process in order to evaluate those things is a good idea. You know, in terms of other time-limited signs in the whole area, I don't know that that would satisfy the people in this neighborhood. As we said, that just pushes vehicles out where other places. It would require more enforcement. So I think these two options are fine, and I think we should be done with this for some time. Staff have spent literally years on this. We've done a significant amount of outreach to the public, and yeah, I think this is good for now. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Any further? Councillor Gannett.
Thank you, Mayor. I do support both of these, but I am concerned that we're not actually addressing the main concerns that people had in the community there. And while I agree, like I've had personal experience with neighbors who thought the front of their house was their parking, and it wasn't. But I think what was different from my experience to the experience for some of the residents on Allbay is the damage being caused. The lack of care that people are parking in areas where they're destroying, and yes, it's not their property, but people take care and they take pride in what their yard looks like. And so when somebody parks on there and damages and doesn't seem to care, I can see why they'd be angry. I mean, I would be as well. It's within that context, it's a challenge. I think these two measures are good. I think I think maybe at some point the speed humps might have to be addressed through that area, because I think what's different than a lot of streets to this street is that this it's quite a narrow street. There's no sidewalks, and I know there are others in our community like that too. But it is a challenging corner, and the visibility is challenging. So when there's pedestrians coming, they can be on you before you see them. So, I mean, I was going to do a motion arising, but it doesn't sound like there's a lot of support for that for the speed humps. Maybe I'll give it a try anyways. I don't know, but I am concerned that we're not. We're saying that this is we'll give this a try, this is it, and that should probably be the end of it, but I don't think we're going to stop hearing about it because we haven't really addressed the major problem. So, I'm going to leave my thoughts there. I think I might have a motion arising at the end of this vote, but I will support these two. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Gannett. Any further speakers? Seeing none, I'll look to call Councillor O'Keefe for a second time.
Thanks. I just want to say I agree with a lot of what Councillor Garnett said in terms of, I agree that I don't think that underlying safety issue has been resolved along the whole part of Allbay, and the issue of people parking on their boulevard. However, that's what that option A was meant to address. And that's why I'm disappointed that they turned that down. So we gave them an option that I think would have addressed that.
Point of order.
But the
Yes,
residents
Councillor O'Keefe?
did not
Councillor O'Keefe?
opt for that. Thank you.
Point of order is that the speaker's not speaking to the motion, talking about a hypothetical situation. So I'd prefer that the speaker had been cut off. Thank you.
Thank you. And not seeing any further discussion, I'll look to call the question. Those in favor? It carries unanimous. Thank you. Do you have a motion arising, Councillor?
I do. I will move that staff install 2 speed humps, one on either side approaching Eden Place.
Do we have a seconder, please?
Second for discussion.
I'll turn to the movers.
Yeah, I've already motivated enough, I think, on it. I think it's, while I understand that this could become something that everybody asks in every community, I think this particular setup is a little different than most of Sydney, so thank you.
Councillor Duck, please.
If I may, through to staff, I recall that the chief gave direction on speed humps on roadways, and I'm wondering what those directions are relative to additional speed humps, or if that still stands.
Chief Mickelson, good evening.
Good evening. Through the mayor to Councillor Duck, the fire department doesn't have issues specifically with speed humps, particularly on that roadway would still remain accessible for our fire apparatus. The angle of approach on our vehicles is at 8 degrees, which is an NFPA standard. So there'd be no issues from a fire department perspective there, and speaking for the ambulance service, I don't believe there'd be any issues from their context either.
Thank you, Chief. Again, through to staff, if I can. Is this opening the Pandora's box, and if we put speed humps on this road, are we going to be asked for them on Bowerbank, on Amelia, on et cetera, et cetera?
Through the mayor, so talking through it earlier there with Councillor Garnett, it can be what we're looking for if approving one-off speed humps is something that makes the situation different. And I think with the curve and the narrowness, I think it's easily justifiable or reasonably justifiable, whereas other streets don't share those same circumstances. So I think in this circumstance, we can justify the different application. We will always be asked for speed humps, and there might be a new wave of requests as a result of this discussion, but those requests come in quite regularly, and having, if we're able to bring forward and council agrees with the traffic calming policy that's in development, that can help manage those requests going forward. So,
Mr. Edwards, please.
Thank you, Mayor. And I'm not opposed to the idea of speed humps, but I do just want to remind council that this was never part of the consultation that went out to the community, and I would just be concerned that the responses from the community haven't taken this into consideration, and so I would just recommend keeping that in mind when considering this motion.
Thank you, Mr. Edwards. I'll turn back to you. The floor, Councillor Duff.
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, those are key points, and I think, as Councillor Garnett's pointed out, this is a unique road that, and we have had some concerns from residents there about speed on this, and since it's a combined business residential usage, it might be valuable to evaluate this particular piece of road in light of the traffic calming coming forward. It may be a good place to test drive, if you'd like, the speed humps. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Novick, please.
I'm not in favor of speed humps for a lot of reasons. One of them was that, as Councillor Duck mentioned, this wasn't part of the original, or Mr. Edwards mentioned, that wasn't part of the original consultation. And I'm not certain that this is going to sit well with residents when it wasn't something that they asked for. And at this point, they've received a lot of what they've asked for, and they are satisfied. But speed humps were not part of that. I don't think there was a speed problem. There was a parking problem which inhibited visibility. Speed humps do nothing to address visibility. However, the no parking signs that are now going to be placed on either side of Eden Place will impact visibility. Visibility will be much better. And I think that some of the issues that were initially part of this complaint will or should disappear. Notwithstanding what Chief Mickelson said, it's my experience that speed humps do slow down emergency vehicles. It certainly won't stop them, but it slows them down. It adds to the distress of crews trying to get over those speed bumps without damaging equipment. I know it's something that they're accustomed to dealing with, but at the same time, it does add a certain level of an obstacle to emergency vehicles moving up and down that road. So for those reasons, again, I don't think it's necessary, so I won't support this. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor O'Keefe, next, please.
Thank you. Well, I appreciate the sentiment to try and improve traffic safety. I'm not in favor of this proposal. I think, as has been said, is that the main one of the big concerns was more visibility around those blind curves. And so, although, you know, having a speed bump at those curves might help, that's not what was asked for. What they wanted was more visibility. And I think the plan now to have no parking in those areas that had visibility problems, that will address the issue. I'm also, as staff indicated, concerned about adding in a solution that nobody really asked for. So I'm inclined to not support this motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Any further discussion? I will turn to Mr. Murphy again, please.
Thank you, Mayor. Just to add on the contrary side, the town-wide survey on speed limits and traffic calming from late last year, there was general opposition to physical traffic calming measures as a general exercise. So it's again one of these things, some people like them on their street but not on anyone else's street, and etc.
Thank you. I won't support the amendment. I think just for reason of process, as others have alluded to, this has been going on. We've been addressing this through several meetings and different engagement with the neighborhood, and I don't think we should proceed with it unless we do, unless we were to do some engagement, and B, staff have indicated that they do have a policy coming forward, and I think it would be more appropriate to give consideration to this apparently good suggestion, but in the context of a policy and public engagement. Thank you. I'll look now to call the question. Those in favor of the amendment? Opposed? Councillor Keefe, Councillor Duck, Councillor Duncan, Councillor Novick, Councillor Renewal, and myself. The amendment is defeated. The motion arising is defeated, not an amendment. Thank you. Any other matters on this? Any other discussion on this? Not seeing any, we'll turn to item 13B, renewal agreement for Tower Crane Rescue Service. I'll turn to Chief Mickelson, please.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. This report seeks Council's consent to renew the Tower Crane Rescue Services Agreement with the City of Victoria for another 5-year term, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Are there questions, colleagues? Councillor Novick.
Thank you, Mayor. Through you to staff. I did look through the agreement. I didn't see a cost. Can I assume that this is a cost-free agreement?
Through the mayor to Councillor Novak, nothing is free these days. It is largely at no cost to the town. The initial site survey and rescue plan is funded by the British Columbia Construction Safety Alliance, which is a cooperative agreement that's done throughout the province. The only cost to the town would be in the event of a tower crane rescue taking place in the town of Sidney, and the city of Victoria had to backfill staff allocated to assist in the town of Sidney. We would be responsible for those costs. Those are the only circumstances in which we would bear any cost.
Thank you, Chief, and thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor. Seeing no further discussion, we do have a recommendation. Councillor Until.
I'll move the recommendation that the tower crane rescue agreement with the City of Victoria be renewed for another 5-year term, 2026 through 2031.
Second?
Moved in second. I'll turn to the movers.
Nothing further.
Nothing further.
Any further discussion? Not seeing any. I'll call a question. Those in favor? That carries unanimous. Thank you, Chief, for bringing it forward. We're turning to item 13C, 2025 financial statements. I'll turn to our Director of Finance, Mr. SÍİEM. Good evening.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As required by the Community Charter, we're looking to obtain Council's acceptance of the town's 2025 financial statements. The various components of the statements and highlights of the year's results are discussed in our staff report. But because municipal financial statements are difficult to interpret for the average user, even more information and context will be provided in the annual report in the management discussion and analysis section of that report. We encourage anyone who has an interest in these things to give it a good read when it's published in June. As a reminder, the financial statements serve a different purpose than the budget variance report, which will be the next agenda item. Financial statements are prepared in accordance with national standards and measure resources coming in and going out of the town's coffers. In contrast, the budget variance report focuses on actual performance versus the approved budget. With that, I'll take any questions council might have.
Thank you, Mr. SÍİEM. I'll turn to colleagues. Are there any questions on this one? Not seeing any. We do have a recommendation. Councillor Novick.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm happy to read in the recommendation, and I so move that the town's financial statements for the year ended December 31st, 2025 be accepted.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? Seeing no discussion, thank you to staff for bringing this forward as is required. All those in favor? That carries unanimous. Thank you. And next, under 13D, we have the 2025 year-end financial results. I'll turn back to Mr. SÍİEM, please. Or I am turning to Ms. Chen, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. You get me for this one. So the purpose of this report is to provide information about our 2025 financial results as compared to the approved budget. As Mr. SÍİEM just mentioned, this particular report is prepared on a different basis and is for a different purpose than the financial statement that was just presented. So just a few words on the layout of this report. It's a little bit different from the quarterly variance report that we do at the 6 months and the 9 months mark. On the operating side, there are fewer notes, as any mid-year variances due to timing would have normalized by year end. On the capital side, projects are grouped into categories that are more relevant for year-end reporting. Given that we provide detailed variance analysis at the mid-year and third quarter mark, there should be no major surprises on this year-end report. In terms of the results, on the general operating side, we incurred a deficit of $441,632. This is in comparison to a budgeted deficit of $570,000, And the predominant factors here contributing to the deficit include policing and park service having higher than anticipated expenses, and building permit revenues was lower than budgeted. On the water operating side, we realized a small surplus of just over $30,000. That's better than the budgeted deficit of just over $32,000. And this was mainly due to lower than expected non-revenue water. That's water that's used but not charged to a user, so primarily for things like firefighting and system flushing. And there were also some smaller savings on the operations of our water system. For sewer operating, we realized a surplus of just over $202,000, which was budgeted to break even. Here, the reason for the better than budgeted result was higher usage and cost savings from experiencing fewer breakages and blockages in our sewer system. So a few words on accumulated surplus, which we've discussed previous reports as well as during the recent budget process. Know that our general operating accumulated surplus is currently below the policy minimums, but an updated policy is expected to come forward to Council by the end of 2026, including potential options and recommendations for gradual replenishment. With water, accumulated surplus is well within policy levels, and a small amount of that surplus was used in the 2026 budget to minimize the rate increase for the year. Sewer is also currently below policy minimums, but as Council recall, we recently introduced a new rate structure with new rates. Part of that was to ensure that we collect sufficient revenues in a way that aligns with our cost structure, with the aim of gradually replenishing that surplus, and then also increase the amount that we're setting aside for asset renewals for our sewer system. For our capital projects, most projects, about 60% of them, saw some activities that incurred direct costs in 2025. It's not unusual to have some projects that don't incur any costs directly. Some of these projects are included to ensure we have funds available should the right opportunity come along for us to undertake those projects. And many others, although didn't have any direct costs incurred, were in the planning and design phase, and staff spent time on those projects, but no costs were directly charged to them. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Ms. Chen. I'll turn to colleagues if there are questions. Councillor Garnett.
Thank you, Mayor. I don't have any questions, but I just would like to provide a comment if I may.
Comments better when there's the motions on the floor, but
Okay.
this is for information, so comments are appropriate.
Thank you. I'd just like to thank staff as made a note of it here, the Frost Lockside bus stop improvements with the flashing lights at the crosswalk. I go through there regularly, and it's made a really big difference for safety. People actually stop for you now when you're at the crosswalkers. Before, you basically had to wait for there to be a gap, and I know we've had some communication from the public. So kudos to staff, really great job of getting that done. And the Beacon Avenue curb returns, addressing the scoring lines that have been forever pointing in the wrong direction for visually impaired people. I think our downtown core is widely used, and there's a lot of vehicle traffic, and I think that's been a really important correction. And I just want to thank staff for that effort of making it our community safer for people who have visibility issues. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Garnett. Any other questions? Not seeing any online. Thank you very much for the full report. And as I say, we're receiving it for information. There's no recommendation. We're turning to correspondence, and the first item under 14A is the Sidney Warming Shelter report that operated from February to March, and the report is from Beacon Community Services. They're not presenting the report. It's provided to Council for information. Are there any questions or comments from colleagues? Councillor Duck, please.
Yeah. First of all, a huge thank you to Beacon Community Services for stepping up and providing the service. Definitely it was identified, and certainly the community supported the result we came with. So I call this a big success, and can't extend our thanks more to those that provided that service and made it happen. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Duck. Councillor Garnett, please. Did you have your hand up? Yeah, I did. Councillor O'Keefe, please.
Thank you. Yeah, I just want to say thanks to BCS, of course, and also thank you to our staff for hanging in there with us while we struggled to get different things in place and finally got this. And so thank you to staff for your persistence and patience. And I know there was a significant amount of staff time and a number of different departments, especially with our chief, in making this happen. Yeah, many thanks. And I wanted to highlight a few things from the report for the benefit of the public that might not read the whole thing. But I think it's important to note that the highest concentration of individuals was like older people, 50 to 64. So a lot of seniors impacted by this. I also found it interesting that over half of the guests were identified as Indigenous or Métis. Most importantly, there were no incidents or negative occurrences reported during any of the activations of the Warming Center. And I think that's really good news, because there were concerns when we embarked upon this from the community about potential negative consequences. And so it's good to see that none of that transpired. And so I'm hoping that the community will keep that in mind as we look at potential other locations next season. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor O'Keefe. Councillor Gurnett.
Thank you, Mayor, and not to repeat what other people have said, but a big thank you to our staff for this. It was a challenging situation, and they in a short time span turned around and came up with a credible solution. So much appreciation, BCS staff and the board, because the board had to meet again, and after we turned down a first proposal, and they moved forward with it in timely fashion. So that was very appreciative of that, and Verl allowing that space, working with us in that space, and the Friends of St. Andrews, who I see here some in the audience this evening. All these groups together need to be applauded, because they made a meaningful difference in the lives of 15 individuals in our community in a positive way. And if I may, my last comment, I would just like to acknowledge my colleagues, Councillor O'Keefe and Councillor Duck, for their advocacy and resolve to find a solution for this season. And thank you for reaching out for me to have the conversation about it. I appreciate the fact that you were not willing to let it go, and because of that, we helped people in our community. So thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Gannett. So this is just for information with no recommendation. We'll turn to the next item under 14B. We have a letter from the Island Corridor Foundation dated April 27th. It was sent to all 13 municipalities and to the Capital Regional District Board, and we have it in our agenda package, so I'm going to consider that members have read it. I would like to make a motion that this be referred to the strategic planning process for the next council, and if there's a seconder, I would motivate.
Second.
Thank you. And so the Reconciliation Corridor Initiative is an initiative involving Esquimalt Nation, SÍİEM Nation. Esquimalt Nation is leading this process, and I think I provided an update to council either just before Christmas or sometime before Christmas or early in the new year that the partnership involves those two nations, 5 municipalities, including Victoria, Esquimalt, View Royal, Colwood and Langford, and the Capital Regional District. And it's an initiative to try to use the approximately 15 kilometers of Island Rail Corridor, basically from Vic West through the SÍİE's territorial lands, or reserve, the SÍİE's territorial land, the Esquimalt Reserve lands, and the rest of the island corridor out to downtown Langford. And there have been monies put up by the Island Corridor Foundation and the Capital Regional District to commence the work. And the reason I'm recommending that this go to the strategic planning process, further to that request from these directors, the mayor of Esquimalt and the mayor View Royal are sitting on the board of the of Island Corridor Foundation. Mayor Desjardins is sitting as the CRD appointment to the board, and Mayor Tobias from View Royal is sitting as a director at large. Is that prior to this initiative coming forward, again initiated by Esquimalt interest in resolving their concerns over the corridor on their reserve lands, there was no process forward for light rail transit either on the island corridor or anywhere on the South Island, even though we had advocated, municipalities had advocated to the province and the CRD had advocated the province to try to start the discussion. And this is getting the ball rolling. It is involving the federal government through local MPs. It is involving the provincial government. And the sooner we have success with resolving the congestion in the West Shore that is at least a magnitude greater than we experience on the peninsula, even though we have the Schwartz Bay Terminal, the airport, and so forth, the sooner our transportation needs, including rapid transit and others, will be addressed on the peninsula or region-wide. So that's my motivation. It will be up to the future council to consider, or give consideration to it. This project will have advanced to a degree. There is approximately $650,000 being spent to further the initiative and produce reports that will come forward in the fall and be presented to both the federal government and the provincial government. Councillor Duck, please.
Yeah, fully concur, and I think this is the first step in creating light rapid transit throughout the CRD region, and certainly next on that list would be Victoria to the ferry, and that would only be a benefit to Sydney, both for the residents here and getting people to and from work, wherever it might be, and certainly to the airport land. So I think this is, in my mind, a no-brainer. Like, we need to make this step to get to the next step, which is our light rapid transit. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further comment? Not seeing any, I'll call the question. All those in favor? That carries unanimous. Thank you, colleagues. The second, we're now turning to the correspondence for information, which I did reference during the review of the agenda. There's no motion required there. We have no notices of motion or motion to go on camera. I'd seek a motion to adjourn. Any opposed? None are opposed. We are adjourned. Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, staff.